Thank you, and welcome to Shophouse number 8. So that's 8 shophouses in a row. Something that might be getting harder to find, but with conservation houses are dreamt for commodity, standing against the higher and higher HDB and condo buildings, it is possible to see 8 shophouses in a row, with many now starring as Starbucks and co-living spaces. I want to really stretch the bow here and talk about how shophouse buildings and shophouse readings are living, breathing entities with characters held in each. What distinguishes shophouse readings from the historic and the repurposing of buildings is the capacity for stories and poems to take us inside and show the corners, the secrets, the hidden stories of family, of Singapore, of Southeast Asia, through imaginative works, storytelling, life writing and creative non-fiction, and poets breathing imagery into the ordinary, asking us to see this ordinary in a different light, to open our eyes and understanding of this place. So welcome distinguished guests, the Dean, Professor Nee, the Head of School, Jonathan Gander, and alumni, and current students in the cohort who've just started in August, who have come along tonight, which is fantastic to see your previous cohort in their graduating reading. So I also want to acknowledge the work of Donna Tung and Sui San Ng in the Master's Program lecturers, and who both thesis supervisors of some of the graduating students here. And a big welcome again to all the other LaSalle colleagues who are here and other heads of school, Sissy Fu, and family and friends. And I know there are a lot of family here from other parts of the world, which is wonderful to see, that you've travelled over to see your child graduate from their masters. So we now run graduating student activities and new cohort classes concurrently. So this is a kind of a challenge to organising, but it does make it mean that we have this exceptional audience. So again, a special welcome. So please join me at the very beginning in congratulating the stars of tonight's Shophouse, who are all in the front row. And they are now alumni of the Masters in Creative Writing program at LaSalle. And they graduated last Friday at Convocation, which was a spectacular event because they wore the new robes of University of the Arts Singapore. And they will be hearing from them, but not all of them. And I acknowledge Win, who is here but not going to read tonight, no matter how hard I asked. And Nadia Iskandar, who are also in this cohort. Nadia, I think, has gone back to Indonesia. So every cohort of students is spectacular in its own way, as individuals and as a group. This group, who would want to hear this from me, has been no less spectacular, but maybe even more spectacular in some ways, if possible. Their willingness to work together, to smash some of the limits placed on them, and to confront their demons in whatever form has been fascinating to watch. I see a few people alarmed, but it was true. In many ways, this cohort has embodied the idea of the shophouse, with its exits and entrances, family intrigues, shop stories, gossip and support. The ins and outs of their time here at LaSalle are best known to them. Their work produced in assignments, extracurricular activities and volunteering on the anthology Sampan has been very much appreciated. Writing students don't just come to LaSalle to learn the techniques of writing in all forms and genres, but to produce stories that matter, stories that resonate with others, telling the untellable and allowing for the digging deep that is required of them. The lines of work and the many assignments produced over their time in the program are produced fast and to deadline, now in just 1 year. And this is the commitment and drive required to keep this metaphorical shophouse alive, congratulations again to this cohort. And this is the way this event will run. I will leave the stage now, but the readers will introduce themselves as they move to the lectern. They will tell you a little bit about their work. And please applaud each reader at the end of their reading. And then they will return to their seat, and the next person will come, and I will return at the end to close the evening. So thank you very much. Welcome.
Oh my God, that's a bit scary. Okay. My name is Stacy, Stanislava Buevich K, and I will be reading from my thesis, which is a novel in progress about 5 women friends from boarding school who celebrate one of their friends' birthdays, and they attend a séance, and the séance gets taken over by the king of the underworld, who says that he wants one of them for his wife, and they must decide who it's going to be, or all of them will die. So yeah. But it's told from 5 different points of views, each one of the friends. And this is the very first chapter. It's just 2 pages. Okay. I bought a new mirror for my bathroom, oval this time. This one doesn't stretch my body sideways, making me look like a fat freak at a carnival. Actually, I'm pretty sure it does the opposite. It makes me look slimmer, much slimmer. But I will tell myself this is the real me. I will convince myself this is not the mirror's magical shrinking powers, but the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. This is how I really look, lithe, beautiful, immortal. I lean closer. Is that a new wrinkle? Happy fucking birthday to me. I'm 37 today, a fact I yearn to drown out with champagne as soon as humanly possible, only I have client meetings stacked back to back until 7. And then Poppy's organized something for 8 o'clock with the girls in South London. Dinner and a séance. Seriously, a séance. I picture Marianne rolling her eyes and surprise myself by laughing, filling my empty flat with a sound other than the TV, the kettle, or this forever dripping tap. I twist the knob again, knowing that it won't stop the water. Janine hated the stap. Drip, drip, drip. Sometimes I miss her brushing her teeth beside me, spearmint toothpaste, and empty promises of calling a plumber. I'm glad she never got it fixed. Silence is far more oppressive. I splash water on my face and follow up with a dab of hyaluronic serum. Apparently this locks in moisture, and at 37, I need all the moisture I can get, as well as vitamin C, AHAs, niacinamide, peptides, ceramides, and retinol. But that one's for the evening. I follow up my 20-step routine with Snow White cream and think of my mother. She'll probably call around 7. I know exactly how that conversation will go. She'll huff instead of wishing me a happy birthday, lamenting the fact that I'm 37 and still single, still alone. She'll once again bring up some friend of a friend's son back in Mumbai. You can't afford to be picky anymore, she'll sigh, and I'll draw a deep breath and say, Mum. On a heavy exhale, then remind her, you know about me. You've known about me for almost 10 years now. You met Janine last autumn. She'll cry again and pray again, begging Krishna to guide me back to the righteous path. I dab thick, goopy sunscreen onto my face, which smells aggressively of mango, and fish the phone out of my pocket to silence it. I'll call my mother back tomorrow. Today, I'll keep chugging along like a toy train, chew, morning meetings, lunch with the boss, more meetings, more coffees, more pasted on smiles. I'll get through dinner, drink myself into oblivion so I won't have to remember the ludicrous séance, and tomorrow I can endure my mother's nagging, distant, and hungover. Perhaps I'll peruse a brochure from the medic clinic next to my office. L-Therapy Prime, Thermage, fillers, more Botox. I want it all, and I want it to hurt. The more it hurts, the easier it is to convince myself that it's working, that I'll be young forever and ever and ever. 37. They say it's the new 20. Bullshit. The whistling of my electric kettle lures me into my virgin great kitchen. I need coffee as much as I need booze. Next to the kettle sits a framed photo of the netball crew, 5 teens in red polyester. I'd like to say that I can't wait to see them tonight, but I only care about one. My eyes fix on Marianne, her arms looped around Olivia's and my own, smiling ear to ear. Marianne skipping dinner, joining only for the seance, a bummer, but at least I get to see her today. Ever since she married that arrogant prick from Morgan Stanley, I barely ever do. I clatter down the stone steps of my blue terraced house. The wind chill forces me to wrap my coat tighter. My watch reads 5:45 a.m. I'm late for work. Well, not actually late yet, but I will be after the hellish Chiswick to Canary Wharf commute, train first, and the Jubilee line. I'm late somewhat on purpose, actually forget somewhat, it's completely deliberate. Janine takes the same tube to Waterloo every morning and I can't risk running into her. She'll cry, or she'll scream, or she'll cry and scream. And no thank you, I don't want that negativity, not on my birthday. My phone vibrates in my pocket. I glance down, checking if my mother is early. It's a text from Marianne, and a smile tugs at my lips. Happy birthday, gorgeous, she writes, followed by a kiss emoji. Thanks, beautiful, I reply, wondering why she's up so early. She texts nothing else. Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stella Kon. I've had a very lovely past year being in the class with this graduating cohort, and we had a very great year together, I would say. I'm a mature student and I've written plays and musicals and novels, but poetry was really the big struggle for me, and with a lot of help from the classmates, I guess I got through it, and I am going to read two poems tonight. One is in the genre called a sonatina, which means that we take a well-known quotation for the first line, then we take one word, in this case the word summer, and repeat it as many times as possible throughout the poem. The words varying it, summer, summy, summer, summer, you'll hear it. And the general format is the sonnet format. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Yet in our country, summer has no slot. Some months are monsoon drenched and some are hot. The image is for us a mere cliche. That summer meme evokes a sweet idyll. I don't assume no rough winds make life tough. We know each other's humors well enough. Some mercy keeps us resonating still. You are the summer and the culminate of all my life requires to summon joy. Time can't consume our music or destroy. Each day together we shall consummate this awesome miracle we've chanced to find, a precious symmetry of heart and mind. Yes. And then, okay, second one, also a sonnet, somewhat more conventional in the form, and it's called Comet. You plunge wide-eyed to meet the world's wonder, ever untired of its endless marvels. I love your delight in seeking the novel, always new interests for you to plunder. Not for you, the task too often repeated. You need fresh goals to set your eyes on, the surprise and challenge of a new horizon, so your mind is renewed and age defeated. Like a comet orbiting around a star, your mind strays beyond all familiar stations, transgressing the limits of imagination. Yet I know, though you go incalculably far, your trajectory after miles by the million loops back to me still at perihelion. And that's it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Neha Narang, and it's an absolute privilege to have been part of the 2025 creative writing cohort. Not only am I privileged to have been part of that cohort, it's also a privilege to have all of you here today listening to our stories. I am a left-brained writer and a right-brained fintech engineer. And that means that what I speak today will somewhat be from the heart, but also be a little bit of logic. I will be reading an excerpt from my thesis, Unbecoming, which has helped me preserve stories as I have experienced them over the years. Unbecoming dwells into the connection between acceptance, psychological safety at home, setting the stage for reflections on the complex relationship between people, places, and culture that makes homes. I talk about Solapur, the home that I left behind. Home is the familiar smell of Bari Mama's yardley lavender powder, faintly intermingled with the coconut oil she used to set her silver hair into a neat plait, and the Vaseline she meticulously rubbed around her elbows. Home was the sound of her short but sure footsteps as she trudged towards my bedroom with a ready reprimand. Give those eyes a rest. Stop staring at the screens. Come eat lunch with us. Her eyes rolling softly, glee etched around the corners of her mouth as she waited on me to give back my retort. Yes, that was home. Sundays in Solapur revolved around chasing Ma's silhouette, visible in the dining room as she peeled and soaked thinly sliced potatoes in salted water, clubbing a few slices in her palms, squeezing the remnants of the salt water before she tossed the potato slices in the kadhai. The hot oil sputtered violently, sizzling as the potatoes made their way in it, scary and enticing all at once. Ma repeated the process till the kadhai was full, crescents of potato slices turning golden. Slowly and surely, she scooped out the golden discs into a large stainless steel container perched close to the stove. The large size of the container was needless. There were never enough crisps to fill it up. The hot crisp barely lasted beyond 10 minutes. Rohan and I took turns to grab them with our bare hands, giggling as though Ma didn't notice that they were gone. She turned a blind eye to it. There were only so many potatoes at home. At some point, the process came to a natural end. If eating the crisps hot off the kadhai kept us at ease, it was a good trade-off compared to us bickering, or worse, asking for her to entertain us. Yes, Ma making fresh potato crisps on Sunday mornings felt like home. We'd run to Dad as he leisurely read the Sunday Times. Keeping it aside, he negotiated with us for the crisps. The ploy, as it is called, is teaching one how to share. We were tough negotiators, only caving at the promise of a toy or a sweet. Once the crisps were over, we ran back to the kitchen, conspiring on how to get some more without incurring Ma's look. One which meant we were in trouble, eventually, if not immediately. After toiling for hours in the kitchen, Ma would set a large steel plate, a thali, into our shared bedroom. It had neatly piled fulkas, soft and hot, bowls of Sindhi curry with freshly picked moringa and tamarind, piping hot rice, and the potato crisps, remnants we had failed to get our hands on earlier. Sitting around the plate, placed on the floor, Rohan, me, Ma, and Dad devoured the meal. Ma often fed Rohan before herself, given he was the youngest. The lack of a dining table never came in the way of the four of us having a Sunday feast. The meal devoured, we prepped for the most fabulous Sunday siestas. These siestas were only possible after a carb feast like Sindhi curry and rice. Some Sundays, Rohan and I left the parents to themselves, escaping to the porch. Running around the bungalow, the towering trees of tamarind, gulmohar, and moringa sheltered us from the blistering Solapur heat. The garden had tulsi and bougainvillea curry leaves shrouded in the shade of the lemon, papaya, and jamun trees. This was a feast for the birds and parrots, as well as the passers-by who were tempted to grab some fresh produce. Badi Mamma, ready for her afternoon nap, lying across the divan, would squint at the gates. "Hey, chala re ikdun," she shouted at the little kids who pelted the tamarind tree with stones in the hope of a tangy treat. Sure enough, her scream alerted them. Squealing in laughter, they often tried their luck for some loot yet again after a few minutes. Her watchful gaze over the trees that sheltered us was surely home. We'd run into her arms, hot and sweaty, to complain about the errant lot pelting our trees. They mocked us, given our age and bravado in fending them off was incongruent. Holding us close in her arms, Badi Mama indulged our grievances to keep us from running back into the sweltering afternoon heat. Plying us with some television, episodes of Tom and Jerry kept Rohan and me entertained while the elders napped. Sundays in Sholapur felt like home, a series of fleeting moments spread across family, food, and nature, a safe, cherished home. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Abergale Shepherdson, and today I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a short story, which was from my thesis. And this excerpt from the short story is called Rats. Jude cracked open a can of tiger beer that his son had brought by on Saturday. He reclined in his armchair, listening to a bird chirping in a tree. The afternoon sun was now setting, light hitting the floor just below the window sill, spilling rays on the settee. The blindness was now spreading to his left eye. The right was already far gone, his vision effectively withering as the days went by. The only thing his blindness had let him keep was his memories. Without new faces and places to replace the old ones, his youth remained brilliant and unfading in his mind. Age had already taken his physical body, so he was grateful to be able to rely on his memory. His granddaughter Emily loved listening to the stories from when he was a boy. Jude expected her to grow tired of his stories about his family's struggle during the war, but every time she visited, she never failed to ask him to tell her more. The first thing that Emily ever learned about the war was that her grandfather was only 10 years old when the Japanese came. That's how he said it, when the Japanese came. Emily thought it was odd, as if they were simply uninvited guests. The second thing she learned was that her grandfather's family had very little to eat. He had 10 siblings, 9 of whom were born before the war, including himself. They lived in a townhouse on Queen Street, much bigger than an HDB flat, within walking distance of St. Joseph's Church. Emily's mother had brought her there once, on Good Friday. Emily wondered if the procession had always been the same, a life-sized statue of Jesus Christ shrouded in a black cloth and paraded around the small compound of the church for Stations of the Cross. And then there was how her grandfather's family lived. Emily struggled to imagine how women of the past gave birth without painkillers. She was especially perplexed when her grandfather told her that it was normal to give birth at home, and that his mother gave birth to his younger sister during the war. She imagined her great-grandmother lying on the bed, sweat coating her forehead, screaming into the air as bombs fell. Finally, and the most dire thing that Emily learned about the war, was that her great-grandfather was captured and murdered by the Japanese. She hadn't realized it at first, but when she did, she felt an overwhelming sadness. Her grandfather had grown up without his father. After going through such a troubled childhood, Jude realized that life was too short to be taken too seriously. He loved making the people around him laugh. He did so, hoping that when it was his turn to go, he wouldn't fade from the memories of the people closest to him as quickly as his vision had. So, even with his eyes failing him, he still made it a point to cook the dishes that his mother used to make when he was a boy. sambal kapitan made with fresh chilies and chicken, small, stewed for hours to tenderize the cheap cuts of beef, and devil's curry, which held a tragic place in his heart. Whenever he cooked the dish, he couldn't help but tear up thinking of his mother. Jude recalled her grinding chilies on a batu giling, humming her favorite tune, Denny Dennis's Hurry Home. And always, once she was almost done cooking, she would call Jude into the kitchen to taste if the gravy had enough salt. The slight sting on the tip of his tongue as his mouth touched the wooden ladle, then the tang and prickly spice in his mouth, tasting the broth. She had died while cooking, you see, the pot still simmering on the stove as she collapsed onto the kitchen floor, only 2 years after the war ended. It was a huge shock to everyone that she'd passed so soon. Jude mourned the memories his mother wouldn't be a part of. Weddings, baptisms, first communions. He wished he had had the chance to look after her the way she had looked after his family, even in her final moments. She deserved to enjoy the peaceful bliss after enduring so much, making sure her family made it out of the war intact. Grandpa was always telling her how lucky she was, although she never felt so. He would say, "All you have to do is go to school and study hard, girl." The reminder always came with how his family had to take turns to eat because there was so little, and that he had to look for work at just 10 years old, the same age Emily was now. Under the hot sun, he would wait with the boys who were older and bigger than he was. They waited anxiously for the Kempetai trucks to stop by and gather up the boys who were old enough to work the factory. Her grandfather would mimic the rumbling of the trucks for added effect. Laboring in the factory was the only work young boys could do to get food for their families. Hours of work in exchange for bread, rice, or fish. Emily pictured her grandfather on his tiptoes, trying to look strong and mature even when he got turned down multiple times. The legal age to work then was 13, but that never stopped him from trying. One day, he got a brilliant idea. And whenever he got to this part of the story, he always had a triumphant look on his face. He told Emily that he had searched for a brick he could stand on when the Kempetai were rounding up boys, to make him taller. Once the crowd had formed around the truck, he placed the brick on the floor and got on top, waving his arm in the air so that the soldiers noticed him. Emily found this incredibly clever, but she secretly hoped that her life would never come to that. Jude prayed that his family would have it easier than he did. No working for soldiers who slapped and hit you when they felt like it, or empty stomachs that twisted themselves in tantrum, and that there would be no more wars to hurt them. And as he told Emily stories of the war, he deliberately left out some painful details, like the accident at the factory, where he was paid to carry heavy barrels for export. Jude never dared to ask what was in those barrels. No one did. Sometimes at night, when the shadows in his eyes were deeper than usual and sleep escaped him, Jude could still hear the scraping of wood and metal on concrete, and the blinding pain from dropping the barrel onto his foot. He wiggled his toe whenever he recalled this, checking if it was still there. It was, but not without the hideous scar to remind him of that time. He made sure to always wear a pair of socks to hide the scar on his toe, a deep, ghastly gash that curved diagonally. Once, when Emily begged him to tell her why he always wore socks in the house, he had no choice but to think up something that would make her giggle. He told her, "I'm afraid a rat will bite my toe." Was it possible for a rat to climb 4 stories into an HDB flat? Emily spent a long time pondering the possibilities. The intricate design on the front gate made it difficult for anything bigger than a piece of cardboard to get through, unless someone left the gate open. So she always remembered to shut it behind her. One hot and humid afternoon, when the entire family was sitting in the living room, Emily asked her grandfather what was so terrible about getting bitten by a rat, other than the shock and pain. He took a sip of his beer first, savoring the cold against the heat. Then he explained that rats ate just about anything they came across and spread diseases that killed people. The thought of catching a disease from a rat mortified Emily. She began making mental lists of places to avoid walking through: drains, car parks, and tall grass, and she never ever walked in the alleyway of a hawker center. When she had no choice but to walk near the areas on her list, her ears pricked at the slightest movement or rustle nearby. Once on the way home from school, Emily spotted the shadow of a rat running through a small drain a few feet away. She ran all the way to her block, more than a kilometer away. Emily sat on the living room couch and burst into tears, realizing that even if a rat were to climb up 4 stories into her grandpa's flat, He would never see it coming. He would only hear that high-pitched squeak before fangs chomped down on his foot. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mehr Gunawardena, and I will also be reading an extract from my thesis. My thesis is a novel in progress, and process as well. It is essentially about a story about 5 sisters, and these sisters just happen to be creation goddesses that I've picked out mythology from around the world. And it is all in the point of view of a creation goddess from Sri Lanka, Kuveni. And Kuveni is particularly interesting because she is famously the devil queen of Sri Lanka. And this is her story and how she experiences life in the mortal realm, I suppose. Okay. They never listen. My lips part. The breath held in my chest begins to move up. Sounds spark, but hush. Silence, so they think. They forget that whispers are not silent. Silence has a sound. My lips aren't theirs, and my voice moves through dreams. It flows through oceans. I can drown. I remember the first time blood trickled down my thighs from my budding womb. The dry, inanimate soil crumbling under my feet, crackling between my toes, felt life for the first time. Saturated in red, I remember the calm, the lust for growth, for creation, the excitement to care, to provide, to nurture. It did not occur to me then the pains of being a mother, a lover, a woman. I felt the threads of my spirit trickle down, layers and layers of earth down, till the final drip met its core. The land was dyed crimson with life. I called my island home Tambapani, and she called my name back to me, Kuveni. Ida Huedo greeted me from the earth's core. The tremor spoke of my sister Mavu, Ida Huedo's soulmate, the primordial serpent that stopped the world from collapsing in on itself. She was trapped in an endless loop of grief. The day Mavu asked Ida Huedo to slither into the world's heart was the day I learned of devotion. The mortal realm has taught me so much in such ugly ways. My time left here is dwindling. The cosmic blood has been drained out of me, and I can hear my goddess sisters calling me back to the cosmos. But I'm too tired. So instead, I'm sitting on the only thing that was ever truly mine, my little Tambapani, reminding myself of lessons learned and how. Thinking of my youth, my cheeks swirl with heat. My sisters had so much and I was jealous. Tara had a spiritual realm and the suffering. Mavu had Gabadu, her Gebe children, and not to mention Ida Huedo. Hope had her Zisia and her golden children. And of course, Inanna had her many lovers, kingdoms, and children roaming around the world. They had a huge, monstrous lands and thousands, maybe even millions of children who worshipped them. I thought they took up all the opportunities and did all the work, leaving me with nothing but this puny island. I wanted to show them that I was powerful too, that I was important too, that I too could be worshipped and loved. My stomach curdles as I remember my absolutely sick foolishness. One by one, they all found something or someone to love. One by one, they left, and I had nothing. I wasn't enough for them. I was scared. I still am. But back then, I didn't know how to cope. I thought I needed something of my own to devote myself to, a piece of me to mother. To be like my sisters, I thought the answer to my fears, to my loneliness, was to have children. I never wanted children. That desire was not something I had in me. But I was supposed to have it, right? Maybe, once I had them, I would be slapped with desire. They would pull the devotion in me. They could give me purpose, at least They would not leave me. I was sure of that because they were made from me. I would be more than enough for them. They were a part of me, less of me after all. Light came and went for a few days as I played with the idea of having children. What would they look like? Who would they be? I am a goddess. I can create anything. The truth is, I didn't care. I just wanted them to love me. I wanted them to be satisfied with me, never leave me and be mine. I was carelessly playing with the powers of creation. I didn't have the conviction like my sisters to breathe life into the world. I needed another way. I had to conceive life within me and give birth. I needed a seed. The heart of the island was a cosmic spirit, the same spirit I had gifted the land when I first came here. The driving force of life on the island was my blood. It had grown, it had become wild. I called to it. My spirit, give me your seed. I will manifest children, swift creatures that can change their form at will. Like a limb, I felt the spirit of my shredded uterus lining respond to my call. The spirit had grown into a dark viscose sangria, spread throughout the island bedrock, resting and fostering Tambapani's life. It pulled together into a spring, collecting its stored energies, tendrils pulled out, twisted and crooked. It began crawling and rolling towards me till finally they were stuck into the trees that stood at the center of the jungle. They will be flashing things, shifting in the shadows of the trees. They will be beautiful, I said. My excitement to end my solitude was blinding. I thought I knew everything, but I knew nothing. I stepped into the eye of the jungle. Burning bright with confidence, I lay my body down. I was the pupil set in the forest's iris. I elongated my body with a cloudy euphoria. I felt my body, my breasts, and my waist with a billowing appreciation. It was a foam bubbling through my cells to the surface of my skin, leaving me sparkling. I was the pearl on this island, and I was about to gift it with more. Once I snuggled my back into the ground, it began. A pit of fear suddenly popped into my belly, slowly seeping into my blood. I ignored it. The roots grew, reaching out to me. First, the rough twine wrapped around my wrists and my ankles, holding me down. Splinters broke off into my skin. Blood trickled down, mixing into the earth, making my muddy birthing pool. The nibs of the roots traced my body, learning my form, understanding my veins. My body pulled and arched, I moaned, and the mud gurgled. I saw leaves shiver against the gray skies. The tree barks developed cold sweats. I closed my eyes as thunder whipped down upon me and the lightning shadows ran across my eyelids. Fallen leaves crept. Are you sure? The voices of the land whispered. Yes, I lied. Okay, that's it.
Hi, my name is Akanksha Raja, and I'm really happy to be here with my fellow graduates of the 2025 class. And I really hope we get to do more such similar readings in the future. My thesis was a collection of poetry titled Breathwork, and it was about grief and impermanence, among other things. So I've prepared three poems to read, but I'm recovering from a bad throat, so I'm gonna take it one poem at a time, and we'll see how it goes. Water body. The sea teaches you what you are, a shifting endlessness, restless in your depths, your limits anchored to the sky and rooted by unseen trenches. Reach and retreat, ebb and flow, make no waves. No thrills for the casual surfer. Light dances on your soft face. Bury wreckage, decorative ruins. Cut into stone, chisel slow. Cave, dent. The salt on your skin is older than thought. Years ago, you crawled out of the sea. Today, she returns you to yourself. That's the first one. Okay, the second one. Elementary. Where does attention go when language enters? What is awareness with no mind to smother it? Okay, so far so good. Okay, foliage. When she died, my mother left behind several plants I could not care less about. I stifle my apathy as I water them, but they have ways of knowing that I am exhausted from the effort and the futility of keeping things alive. They lean away, leaves skulking over the edges of their pots. Some are withered, pale yellow and limp, others on the same stem, strong and green. Death breeds in every living being. Sometimes they rise back up, push against the window pane for sunlight and air, and every so often the hibiscus unfurls blush petals like small mercies. A year passes. They fade quickly as breath. I do not grieve. Sediments spiral down the sink's dark throat. Death is dry, crisp, and brown, crumbling in my hands. I return them to the compost she created, a creche of decay, and I almost believe that even waste can become a kind of womb, wet with newness. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Charvi and Charvi Rammohan, and I'm going to be reading something I wrote in story class. So this one is about how adventurous it is to be a woman. So it's basically about taking a cab in India. Uh, 2 minutes away was what the app said. I waited for the cab to take me home. I watched my friends smoke outside the bar where we had been drinking all night. Despite wanting to do the same, I decided not to. The last thing I needed was a set of eyes fixed on me, judging, as though I had brought shame upon my forefathers. The regret from the short dress I was wearing, paired with the soul piercing stares of a night vendor who had set his tea selling bicycle opposite where I stood, awakened a meaningless morality within me. A morality that often belonged to a woman, one that reminded her to stay within the boundaries set by time and place. Don't stay out late, for who knows what could happen to a lone woman, and watch what you wear. You do not want the unnecessary attention of a man who suffers from the inability to control his impulses. My friends, all men, had finished smoking their cigarettes and were about to leave. They wanted to wait until I had gotten into the cab and was on my way, but did not want to make me feel lesser by doing such a thing, or so I told myself. The best I got was a, "Do you want me to drop you home? But I am going in the opposite direction, though." An offer that was retracted as soon as it was made. Was I being gaslit into thinking I might receive something I clearly would not? My cab arrived while I stood there analyzing the complexity of that offer. I opened the door to the unappealing vehicle and sat in it. The inside smelled like 1,000 farts had fused to birth this car. This was my ride home. I tried to make myself comfortable and asked the driver to turn the AC on. He gazed right into my eyes through the mirror as though I'd asked for a cut from his ancestral wealth before he turned it on. After shaming myself for asking something that I told myself was not a necessity, I remembered that I was the customer paying for the cab, and not just any cab, a premium one, and therefore entitled to certain amenities. Just as I was about to look through my phone, he shot me a question: "Have you smoked?" I tried to understand the nature of this question and contemplated if it was one I needed to answer. But then occurred to me I was a lone woman in the car of a stranger, driving through empty streets via a route I wasn't familiar with. So, no, I haven't, became the answer that was given. Yet the right answer was yes, I have. In fact, I spoke to a couple, but I cannot tell you that, can I? Because then you would judge me and make assumptions about my character, like you're the lord of the universe. I also see you looking at me through the mirror every time I adjust the neckline of my dress. The time had come for me to share my live location on the Cabs app. That way, my friends, who probably couldn't care less about anything on a Sunday night, would know how far I am from home, and most importantly, if the driver was going the right way. As I looked away from the phone and out the window, I realized that we should have passed through a toll gate by now, and on the road leading up to the gate, there should have been a giant banyan tree I could not find. Should I ask him which way he is going? But there was the fear of hitting the wrong nerve and causing trouble for myself. I'd already done the unthinkable by smelling of cigarettes and having asked to turn the AC on. Maybe this was the right route, and I just happened to not know this particular one. But even before I could get hold of my thoughts, the what ifs creeped in. What if, on the way, a friend of his gets it? Darn it, I forgot my pepper spray. Maybe I can attack him from the back, but will that even work? Worse, what if I get taken in a van to an isolated spot and the next thing I know, I'm on a ship on its way to some part of the world in the West getting paid $5 for a lap dance because clearly I'm not the color that gets paid more. As I kept spiraling down my drain of thoughts, the brightly lit neon board of a mini mart struck my eye. It wasn't just any mart, but the one close to where I lived. A wave of relief hit me as we began to drive through my neighborhood. The car halted outside my apartment. The watchman stood up to greet me while their eyes scrutinized my life choices as I got out of the car. The next objective was to find an empty lift and avoid any possible human contact. Thanking the gracious gods who had watched me all night, I entered a lift with no passenger. The doors were about to close when a not so gentle looking man, who was a lot bigger than I was, entered the lift. I carefully slipped my hands into my purse, grabbed my keys, and held it between my fingers in preparation for a fight I probably wouldn't win. I was practicing some kill moves in my head that I had picked from a few self defense tutorials on YouTube. When the lift reached my floor, the not so gentle looking man held the door open as I got out, to which I smiled and then walked away. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am Lydia Shah, and I am the last reader for today. Not the best one, as you can tell. There were many, many, many good readings today, but I will try my best to keep you guys entertained. So I'm reading an excerpt from a short story that is called "The Island South of Port Dickson." And this is part of my thesis, which is a collection of short stories. And the thesis is called Island Affairs. I'm working on it, is all I can say. I dedicate this story to my buddy Victor, who inspired this piece. I heard the muffled Ave Maria, the Bach version, as I remember it, from the room upstairs. I knew it was the Yo-Yo Ma version because Henry bored me endlessly with classical music factoids. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a poignant soundtrack to mark the end of my best friend's life. I called out to Henry from the bottom of the stairs, hoping my shaking voice could cut through the cello. The song ended. In the few seconds of silence, I called for him again, but Chopin played instead. I climbed the stairs as my stomach churned nervously, my heart finding its way further up my windpipe. I knew in my gut what I was going to find, but hoped I was too imaginative for my own good. At the top of the stairs, I tapped on his bedroom door. The cold air blew on my toes through the cracks beneath. "Henry?" I called through the violins. Still no response. "You better not be fucking dead," I whispered. I opened the door and Henry was there, tucked into bed, frozen, pale and stiff. His eyes were shut, his head slumped over on his side unnaturally. There was no more life in him. The air conditioning draft hit me as always. I once teased Henry that he lived in the only igloo in Singapore. The cold air kept him from decomposing in the tropical climate. Everything was in place. His bed was draped in solid dark grey sheets, pillows stacked neatly on both sides of his queen-size bed, his PlayStation wedged next to the 60-inch TV, that was playing music on autoplay. All three of his mobile phones were parked neatly on their magnetic stands. His tumbler of presumably passion fruit cider was nestled in the makeshift cup holder installed on the bedside. And finally, the vanilla candle, aka the best scent of all, dried out, extinguished. I kept staring at his motionless body, waiting to see his chest rise and fall. I pressed my index finger against his wrist, confirming what I already knew. Claire de Lune was next on the playlist. I knew this one because he said it was named after me. Of course it wasn't. I clutched onto his lifeless hand apologetically as I closed my eyes and enjoyed this last song for him, something he always wanted me to do. I whispered, tears rolling down my face. I'm so sorry, buddy. Palawan Beach was the only place in Singapore Henry was willing to go to besides the office and the neighborhood 7-Eleven. My exposed skin singed under the afternoon sun. The balding palm tree above me barely provided me with any shade. I scanned the yellow sandy beach. Only a handful of people agreed that Palawan was the place to be at 1 o'clock on a Saturday. It's no Bondi Beach, but it's the best you people got, Henry said. He dragged me to his perfect spot, an unshaded mound of sand 10 meters away from the lifeguard station. It's where he insisted our belongings were visible from any angle. I observed the smattering of beachgoers who had the right idea to seek respite in the few pockets of shade along the beach. I reluctantly agreed to set our towels over this sunny spot. I ambled over to the edge of the sea, allowing the murky green waters to splash onto my toes. Specks of sediment carried by sea foam mimicked the shores of Port Dickson. It's where my dad taught me to swim. I called Henry over, but I saw a hint of hesitation in his eyes, a look I had never seen before. Hang on. I stopped him from entering the water. Can you swim? Ish. I've been coming here every weekend for the last few months to teach myself how to swim. Oh, fuck, you can't swim, I said. Henry entered the warm bath cautiously, inching deeper into the water until his head bobbed above the surface. His eyes darted uncontrollably. His mouth gaped open, desperately pulling air into his lungs. Yep, you can't swim, I thought. But he could float. Good enough. Do you want to try swimming to the islet? I'll race you, I challenged him. Maybe another time, he said with a sheepish grin, his voice pitched high. Look, I said, Singaporeans are good swimmers because we have nothing better to do on this stupid island. Every Singaporean kid does weekend swimming lessons at the public pool. If something happens, I've got your back. He blinked at me, unconvinced. The lifeguard is right over there, dummy, I assured him. That worked. As our feet parted from the sandy bottom, his eyes rapidly blinked to the rhythm of Hastings' strokes. But I wasn't worried. I had taken a water rescue course back in the swimming club in university. I knew I could save a stocky Australian bloke. Henry made it. As we reached the southernmost point of continental Asia, and his feet touched the sand again, he heaved a deep sigh. We perched on a flat boulder overlooking Palawan Beach as his breath returned to its natural rhythm. You're not too bad, I said to him. I can't believe you got your feet off the sand. I've never been able to swim this far out before, he admitted. That's because I'm here, I smiled. Well, you have a very big responsibility then, Henry said, because I'll be very mad if I died in Singapore. At least you can leave and get out of this hellhole, I said. I'm stuck here. Well, you don't have to tolerate being here if you don't want to, Henry said. He didn't get it. These ignorant foreigners with their Commonwealth visas and career mobility. Why couldn't he understand that privileges don't apply to everybody? How would I go about leaving Singapore? I couldn't leave my own house without my mother trying to chain me to the door. Singapore was the only place I ever lived in or worked at. I can't simply pack my things and walk into another country and start a new life. Not at 35. Easy for you to say, I just lost my job. If I hadn't been fired, I could have asked for a relocation. I wouldn't have to be stuck in Singapore with my mother, I retorted, nearly raising my voice. Now I've got to start all over again. Henry went quiet, and we simmered in awkward silence. I finally found a way to acknowledge my disappointment over the layoffs, the elephant in the room, the one thing I avoided talking about for the last 2 months. You know I couldn't do anything about it, right? He whispered. I didn't know they were going to let you go. It's not your fault. You are not my manager, I said. But I am a manager, said Henry. I paused and studied his face before letting out a cheeky smirk. You're right. This is your fault. He broke the tension in the air with his boisterous laugh and he shoved me off the boulder. I fell into the shallow, warm waters. As my head plunged beneath the surface, the rising cloud of sand blurred my vision. My breath instinctively held in my chest, as my father taught me to do. Hold your breath, his voice echoed seconds before a crashing wave. I hadn't thought of our road trips to Port Dickson until that moment, simmering in the memory of a time when I knew my father was waiting to catch me. I rose to the surface, releasing a gasp, swallowing fresh air. Henry extended his hand, large, firm, and reassuring. Laughing off the salty sting in my eyes, I grabbed his forearm, like muscle memory, his grip decisive and familiar. Buried in my instinct was a knowingness that Henry was there to catch me on the surface, like my father did. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the fabulous readers, and please join me in giving them a loud and warm round of applause. Everybody knows how proud I am of my students every year, but I am especially proud of this group of students because you were the first in the 1 year. So, I really congratulate you and am so impressed with the work you've done. And your readings were really beautiful, so well done. Thank you.